My name is Willy Bolander. I study influence, persuasion, and leadership in selling and sales management, and I teach people how to sell. In this podcast, we'll talk to some of the world's top sales leaders and see what we can learn from them. Welcome to the Sales Lab. This episode of the Sales Lab is brought to you by the 2020 International Collegiate Sales Competition, a sales recruiting event happening November 11th through 14th in sunny Orlando, Florida. Look, we all know that recruiting top talent is a persistent challenge for sales organizations. The mission of the ICSC is to enhance the selling profession by encouraging the development of the critical sales skills needed by today's collegiate sales graduates in a fun and competitive environment, and to provide a venue where companies can meet the nation's top collegiate sales talent in one place. This year, the ICSC will be attended by over 500 sales-focused college students from over 90 universities who come to compete in either a sales role-play competition, a sales management case competition, or both. Will your organization be there to hire the best of the best from around the country? Visit www.icsc-fsu.org. That's ICSC as in International Collegiate Sales Competition, FSU, as in Florida State University.org, for more information on how you can get involved. Don't let these great recruits go to your competitors. All right, in this episode, we are doing part 2 of our conversation with Val McCausland from Gartner. We'll talk a little bit about what separates the best salespeople from the average and those that are struggling. She'll take a few moments to make fun of my comically oversized microphone, which kind of hurt my feelings. Speak a little bit about what to look for when hiring and how to know whether you found it. A little bit about coaching, coachability, and adaptive leadership. And then Val will give us 3 book recommendations for texts that she thinks every sales leader should have on their bookshelf or at their desk. Hope you enjoy it. What separates the best salespeople that you have from the average ones, and the average ones from the ones that struggle?
Funny enough, the best do not overly analyze, but they analyze. They want to learn from whatever they just did because they never want to do that again unless it was successful. They shamelessly steal from others. They go to the top of the stack. They figure out who those people are. They don't worry about how much time they're taking from those people. They just learn exactly what they did and they go implement it. They're usually very quick to get concepts and very quick to process. Oftentimes, what separates the good from the great, or the good do those things, but they're sometimes too quick to act, meaning they're not doing enough prep work. They're not thoughtful enough in their approach. So they're going to resources, they're asking for help, they're very curious with their clients, they're listening to what's going on, they have the drive and tenacity, but they're jumping too quick instead of really taking a step back and getting a good game plan in place. And then the lower echelon of those individuals, it just depends. It depends if they have the right traits, right? I would say someone who's not curious enough, in my opinion, is not right for sales. If you're genuinely just not curious to figure out, where did you buy that obnoxiously large microphone? And why would you ever think to buy such an obnoxiously large microphone? And how did you get into this idea? And what was interesting about this? If you're not that curious, you're coming at it constantly from a me lens versus a them lens. And the them lens is the single most important thing in sales. Next to that, it would be either drive or tenacity. Things were handed to them. They struggle through adversity, but that would be on me that I made a mishire and put somebody in that position, quite frankly. But it is usually a trait-based concern that where we probably put somebody in that position.
So those are some of the things that you look for when you're recruiting, trying to make these
Absolutely.
hiring decisions. It always amazes me that if you ask somebody involved in recruiting, what do you look for? Almost without fail, you get a really long list of very abstract, hard to define characteristics, and I'm always curious to hear how people observe these types of things.
Sure.
And how do I? So we want somebody with with character. Okay, well, what does that mean, and how do you know? How do you tell? So, so walk me through some of the things you look for when you're making this hiring decision, and how you gauge that from somebody's resume or an interview or whatever.
Yeah. Number one, looking for drive. We define it at Gartner as will to win. If I had to break that down and some of the things that I would ask or look for, it's, are you motivated? Do you need someone to light your pilot light every morning, or do you never have it go out? You are motivated. I can inspire you. I am a firm believer you can't motivate people. You can inspire them, but they need to be personally motivated. And those are internal or external drivers that motivate them. And so someone who just, their pilot light doesn't go out. There's a whole slew of things that go along with drive, like resilience and adversity and so on and so forth, that we'll test for. I look for that in sports, and I look about not about what you would do in a situation, but what you have done in a situation. So I'm constantly trying to understand decisions you made. If I ask you a question about your most memorable sporting moment, and you talk about your biggest failure, that's not always a bad thing, because I want to know actually why that was your biggest moment, and what did you learn from it, and what part did you play, and what did you do after it, and so on and so forth. So drive is the number one thing. Next to that, I'm looking for executive presence. And executive presence, it may have that character, right? It might be your charisma, your value system that you bring to the table, your communication skills, your level of curiosity, your listening skills, which I don't think people are taught to listen well enough sometimes.
Yep.
And so, those are really great things in executive presence that we look for. And a lot of that is the can see it. I can see it through the interaction, but I also might look at it from a has done it perspective to say, tell me a time that you were really uncomfortable approaching your professor or mentor, but your value system said that you had to. And so tell me what that moment was where you had to approach them about something. What was it? What was the outcome? What'd you learn from it? And what it tells me a lot about it is not that they had the courage to approach that person, but their thought process in doing it, and why it was so important, and who did they talk to before they did it? How did they prepare before they went in? And just their mindset and maturity of going through those things. Next, I'm really looking for their overall intellect. And so I mentioned earlier, you need to be quick. We take in so much information. And so someone who struggles to take in large amounts of information in a consultative sale probably will struggle. Maybe not so much in a tactical sale where it is either a B2C, or there is an obvious need for whatever you're selling and everybody needs one, and I just need to understand what color you want, size you want,
what the delivery address is. Yeah,
exactly. And so we really go in to understand how you process information. And lastly, we're overall looking for your sales acumen, and that comes down to, in your case, perhaps how you're professionally trained, your process that you move through, and really overall philosophy. So a lot of the same questions you're asking me, going back and really talking through how they feel about sales and why this is important to them, and the techniques that they use, and identify how coachable they are, so on and so forth.
How can you, because we talk about that one all the time, how can you tell if somebody's coachable or not?
Well, so there's the has done it and the can see it. Those are two key buckets that we look at in the interview process. The has done it, I want examples of, tell me a time with your, in your last employment that you were given feedback that you disagreed with. What was it? What did you do with it? And who gave it to you? And now reflecting, do you agree with it or disagree with it? And you'll get the context around it, right? I'll ask about, in sports, who was your most favorite coach and why? How did he or she coach you? What did they need to know about you before they coached you? The can see it, I want to see, are they growing from the feedback and coaching I'm giving them? Do they make excuses? At the end of the role play that we do in practice round, if it's not perfect, which I can't remember the last perfect one that we heard, are they self-aware? And are they asking for feedback, and are they trying to implement it in that next round when we're practicing together? The make excuses part is a really big deal, right? And some people might be defensive. I tend to find that there's less defensiveness in interviewing and more, well, I did this because, or the prep sheet that I had on it, or I wasn't ready for that. It's a sign. It doesn't mean they're not coachable, but it's a sign I need to dig in further.
Yeah. So, just like we talk about adapting, adaptive selling, adapting your sales approach across customers and situations, we talk a lot about adapting your leadership or management style across different types of subordinates. Can you explain, how you manage different types of salespeople in different ways, and
Sure.
Why what's the variable that's different about those people that clues you in on that you should treat them differently?
Yeah. I just had this conversation with an individual who moved out of inside sales into large enterprise in the field. And it's funny because he was giving me feedback on the environment that he came from and his environment he's in right now. So we just had this conversation. And you use the word manager. I think that's probably the problem. What we do is not manage. If I'm managing someone, like you would manage at Starbucks to make sure that the right coffee goes out with the right name on it, you're probably not going to create an environment for an early career development sales professional to feel safe to fail. So the managing it is not where I start. I start with leading. And what do I look for? What are those attributes? What clues me in? I look for it in every single person. It's not that you need to be 6 foot tall for me to decide that I need to coach you differently. I firmly believe that if someone wanted to be successful and believes in themselves enough to be successful, and we believe that they had the traits to be successful, I can make them successful. And I have to figure out how to do that, right? So it's not this cookie cutter, one size fits all. And it comes down to some of the questions that we just talked about, which is, tell me who your favorite coach was. Why were they your favorite coach? How'd they get through to you? What's the stuff you don't want me to know about? Your pet peeves and the things that you don't feel like you're maybe as good at as you'd like to be, right? I share mine. When I came into business, I was the single most intolerant, impatient human being I think I had ever met. I didn't know that. I thought I was awesome, right? But at the time, many people had told me, you're super intolerant. You need to really be more tolerant. And I learned more about that. And so most people have been given feedback by somebody that was important to them. And they'll tell me, I struggle with time management. I'm not good at it. Okay, all right, we'll give you some ways to work around that. Let me tell you, by not focusing on it, what it can hurt in your business. And so it's not something you can brush under the rugs. We talk through it, but it's just getting to a place of trust where somebody realizes you're not trying to manage them. I'm just trying to make them successful. Otherwise, I didn't do my job. That's why I said this is the best job at Gartner and the best job at sales, because I'm not hiring tenured salespeople who know what they're doing, and I'm managing them and make sure they're managing clients. I'm trying to grow new sales professionals.
What are some of the assumptions that they come in with that you have to correct or adapt or challenge them on in order to make them successful?
It depends on their parents or influencers in their life. So some of those influencers say, don't show weakness. Depending on how they were raised and who they are, it's, put up a wall when things are tough versus be a bit more vulnerable. And so it's hard to get people to feel comfortable with that if either an influencer has told them that's what you should do, or that's how they live their life because of maybe bad situations that they've been in. So that's probably the hardest one. If I can get somebody to be vulnerable with me and they're quick enough, smart enough, and curious enough, we can get over that hump. But it's that level of vulnerability to build trust, which is a key to them being successful, because if they can't do it with me or with one of my leaders, they probably can't do it with a client either. So it's that building that mutual trust where I'm going to ask you for $100,000 over the phone. Trust me, right? It'll be fine. It'll all work out. And you got to be able to bring that wall down a little bit on both sides to do that.
I've got a co-author and friend up in Boston, Lauren Beadle-Spocker, and she and I talk a lot about vulnerability, in terms of research ideas and, ideas that we could test, with data and things like that. Because, we certainly see it even in academia, that there are groups of people that believe that no weakness should ever be shown, and always a strong response, even if it's complete, falsehood or something, as long as you say it very strongly and assertively, well, that can't be like mentally healthy, first of all. But
I'd be worried about having a heart attack.
It also just seems, foolhardy. Like everybody's good at some stuff and bad at some stuff, and that's okay. It's okay to be honest about that. And
agreed.
So vulnerability. What about the field? More broadly, what do you see other people doing, or the assumptions that other sales leaders and sales organizations make that you think, man, they're really missing the ball on that? Maybe everybody believes it, but really, there's a better way to look at it.
I see it even pockets in an organization with leaders who are trying to hit a number, and you only have so much time to spend with people. And so all the things that I'm saying, in theory, you want to do, it's making it in practice. And so I can't tell you a sales leader that I've talked to that didn't feel similarly to the way that I felt, but it's the operationalizing that and making it work in a day-to-day and creating an environment that I just described. So I'm probably making it sound easy, but it's not easy. And it's even harder bringing up leaders in an organization that themselves were just removed, probably 1 to 2 years removed out of college, because it perpetuates, right, of that impatience.
They're going to absorb that, and that's interesting.
So I think it's probably more pervasive. People want that to be, but it's that constant push and pull with, I know the right thing to do, but you have to balance that with the number. I'm just a firm believer that if you actually do those things, a number will come, instead of watching the scoreboard all the time. The other thing is the micromanagement. I mean, you hear a lot from both generations that we have out in early career right now in the workforce, and it's very similar of, I don't want to be micromanaged, I want to be trusted. And so there's a balance of, how do you help somebody learn how not to fail so much and not micromanage?
All right, I think we are about out of time.
Okay.
I'll ask you one last question. What are some books, maybe 1, 2, or 3 books, that all sales professionals or leaders should have on their desk or their bookshelf?
I'm the worst with books. First of all, this is probably the worst thing you want on your podcast. I hate boring business books. They're the worst.
That's fair.
My favorite leadership book is very small, and it's called Minute Motivators for Leaders. It's my Bible. It sits on my desk. I check it probably once a week.
Minute Motivators. Who wrote that?
I couldn't tell you.
No? Okay.
Sorry.
And these are things that you are then going to go use with your team, or they just motivate you individually, or?
It's more leadership leadership topics and leadership reminders. So what to focus on when in a challenging situation, and it really resets your mind. Anytime I need somebody to help me hit the reset button, if my mentor's not available, if I need to really talk through things, that Bible's where I go. The second book is The Power of Habit. The Power of Habit is a phenomenal book. Cannot tell you the author either. It's a yellow book with a big red circle on the front.
Yellow. Okay.
Yeah. I can't tell you who sings songs, who was in a movie.
No problem.
Names are not my good strength. So Power of Habit, the book specifically walks you through the science of what it takes to actually change habits. And so it really breaks it down from a psychology perspective in not only the way that you think, but how your actual brain functions and what it takes in order to create new habits. We tie that back into how you create discipline in sales and discipline in business and how you create a habit. And so it's not about the fact that you're not good at this, it's that we haven't created the habit. And so we use that as a backdrop. And I would say my third favorite book has always been Switch by the Heath brothers. I know the author of that one. The Heath brothers are amazing. I love Switch so much because, again, it has a psychology backdrop to it. It's how you get people to do things that either they, A, didn't want to do, or B, are afraid to do, or C, didn't know how to do. And so There are a couple of key components of it. It's one, follow bright spots. Go to the things that are working versus focus on the things that don't. You're probably familiar with this with kids. You don't focus on the F's on the report card. You focus on the A's. And what about those classes did you like? And how do you feel like you excelled in those classes? And try to replicate some of those things in the other areas. The other main component of it is really appealing to someone's logical side, emotional side, and then clearing a path so that you can actually make change occur. So great business book, but they're not boring business books. So all three of those I recommend.
Perfect. Well, thank you for chatting with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Appreciate it. That's it for this interview. I hope you got something valuable out of it. Of course, if you did, be sure to subscribe and rate this podcast on whatever app you use to listen. Also, share this with your colleagues and friends, and let's continue to have a deeper discussion on all things related to selling and sales leadership. See you next time in the Sales Lab.